My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be talking about what's going on in Anchorage, which, for those of you who do study the Alaska real estate market, you'll know that Anchorage is the largest real estate market in the entire state. Now, we're going to be looking at the residential, the condo, and the multifamily market and trying to get a kind of a sense as to what really happened in the real estate market in 2022 as a whole, because now we have the complete data for the entire year and try to kind of give you some roadmap for what it is that you should be thinking about moving forward. Before we get started, though, do make sure you give this video a like. Please subscribe because that does help out a ton with our algorithm. And let's go and jump into today's market update, looking first at the residential market. Now, the first thing that we see looking at the residential market, December is not really a hot time of the year for selling real estate in Anchorage. This time last year, there was approximately 220 homes total that were for sale in Anchorage. Now there's 240. There was 240 in December. So this is significant because for the second month in a row, we're seeing a very slight increase for the inventory we had compared to the month before. And, like I said before, this is a bit of a change because we've not really seen more real estate, more homes being on the market compared to the previous years for, I'm willing to say, probably 3 or 4 years at this point. It's been pretty significant. It goes further back than what the data shows. This time last year, though, 220 homes, I want to say that's probably the lowest it's been in decades. I'd have to actually go and look at it, but that is very, very low, even if we're looking for the lowest months we can possibly find. Now, the next thing that we see is that the number of properties that actually sold in Anchorage during this time period actually took a pretty significant dip because there was about 370 properties that sold this time in December last year. Now it was down to about 140. So you see a precipitous, about 50% drop. And we haven't seen that steep of a drop in months. Now, we have seen a pretty characteristic dip in the past year, really. Looking at every month, there's been less sold compared to the year before. This time, for the entire year, it was about 3,800 this time last year in 2022, 3,600, and now we're looking at approximately 2,800 homes that sold for the entire year of 2022. So you see, compared to the year before, there's less demand than what we had. So this is a sign that the market's starting to slow down a little bit and starting to cool off just a bit. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the market is suddenly a buyer's market, but we'll talk more about that in the summary. Now, the next thing we see is that the average sold price went from about $424,000 to about $457,000, which means that we had about a 6.9% increase this time last year. Now we're looking at about 7.5, if I recall correctly. So that's interesting. So let's dive into that. So we see that there are less homes that are selling. We're seeing that there's starting to be a little bit of an increase in the number of properties that are available, and yet the rate of appreciation is actually going up compared to what we saw the year before. So you would kind of expect to start seeing the prices easing up, starting to see things sliding backwards. But instead, the rate at which it's increasing is actually going up a little bit, at least currently from what we're seeing in the data. So what does this mean? Well, we'll talk more about that in the summary. Let's take a break here real quick. For those of you who have been watching for a little bit, you do know that I host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast, and the purpose of that podcast is really tell the stories of people who have recently moved up here to Alaska or those who've lived up here for a long time. So if you're thinking about making a move up here, that might be a great place to start so you can kind of start seeing what other people have done to accomplish what it is that you're wanting to do. So link for that is going to be in the description section down below. We've got tons of episodes on there, so jump in there, go treat yourself. And without further ado, I'll let you go ahead and get back into today's market update. Let's go and talk about the condo market real quick. So there were about 130 condos total that were on the market this time last year, and now we're seeing that there are 60. So about a 50% drop. And keep in mind, 120, 130 condos, that was still pretty low for the time being. That's still not a lot to begin with, but it pretty much got cut in half for the month of December compared to the year before. Now, the next thing we see is that there were about 145 condos that sold this time last year in the month of December. Now, this month was 75 condos sold. And that also being said, there was approximately 1,500 condos that sold for the entire year. Now the number of condos that sold is just under 1,300. So across the board, we're seeing that there's definitely less condos available, which means it's going to result in less condos actually selling. Because there's a little trick we were doing back in 2020, a little bit of 2021, where the inventory was super low, and we were still setting records for the number of properties that were selling. And I mean, myself and a lot of other people were saying, hey, this is great. It's not going to last like that for long. Eventually, this is going to catch up and you're going to start seeing fewer and fewer transactions happening, which is what we're seeing in the data now. Now, the next thing that we're seeing is the average sold price for a condo in Anchorage is about $230,000. This time last year in 2021, and now we're seeing that the average sold price for condos is about $244,000. Average sold price increased by, I think it was 6.8 if I recall correctly, and now it went up by about 5.3. So the rate at which the condos are going up is starting to come back just a little bit. In the condo market, I will say if you have a condo and you're considering selling it or you've been thinking about it for a while, this is probably going to be your best opportunity. I've had a number of condos that I've listed recently, and they sell like hotcakes because everyone that was looking at buying a house and they're thinking of switching gears a little bit and finding something a little bit more economical for them. They're looking at condos, but there's not a whole lot of options at the moment. So if you are looking at selling your condo, this could be one of your best opportunities. Now, let's go ahead and take a break real quick here. For those who've been watching for a little bit, you do know that I focus primarily in South Central Alaska. That being the case, though, I do have colleagues across the entire state that actually collaborate with me on this channel, kind of ranging all the way from Fairbanks, Kenai, Homer, Kodiak, Juneau. We've got people all over the place. So if you are considering doing something or moving to one of these areas, or you have real estate you're considering selling in one of these spots, do feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to get you in contact with whoever is the specialist in your area. Now, let's go and finish up today's market update looking at the multifamily market. All right, this one's really for you investors out there. So this time last year in December, there were 97 multifamily properties that were available. Now, this time in 2021, in December, 27. Not a whole lot available out there. And keep in mind that 90 properties that were available before, not a whole lot to begin with, and it pretty much got cut down to a third of what it was before. Now, despite the number of properties available, we do see that the number of properties that actually closed, it came down, but not by as much as you would think, because it went from about, I think it was approximately 490 multifamily properties sold in December this time last year. Now it was looking at about 400. So you do see a bit of a drawback, not by as much as you would think. And I'm kind of theorize the reason for that is that we do see a lot of demand for multifamily properties just because the rents go up, which makes a lot of multifamily properties suddenly a lot more valuable because it's all based on what the rents are and what it can actually cash flow. Keep in mind that is not a cure-all for a property. If it's got a ton of problems and it doesn't cash flow, once you factor all these things in and kind of that longer deferred maintenance kind of stuff, then it's kind of hard to dig your way out of that just with cash flow alone. Across the board, what is it that we're seeing? What is my message to buyers and to sellers in this market? Well, really, I'm just going to give a message here for everybody, and that is the market that we had in 2020 and 2021 is no more. That is officially done. We are no longer in this super uber competitive market that we were in before, where house went on the market and the asking price was just kind of the starting point in a bidding war where it just went up and up and up. And the stuff you were giving away was stuff you would not even have considered a couple of years ago. So that is by and large done, which for those of you who are buyers, that's going to make you feel a lot better, just knowing that there's a little less stress there. There are some other challenges, though. And one of the biggest ones being that just because there's less pressure does not mean that the prices are suddenly sliding backwards. You know, this is a time of inflation, and so we're starting to see that the prices are continuing to go up regardless the number of, competitiveness or the number of people that are interested in properties at the moment. Interest rates are certainly having an impact. I don't have any data in front of me showing me, I wish I could say, it's having a 60% impact on the market. I can't really say that. I can say that it is having a market. It's making some buyers really decided to kind of pull back for now. I'm not really seeing the inventory being solved anytime soon because everyone that bought the past couple of years, they would normally be looking at selling in about a year and a half from now. There's no way they're going to be interested in really selling anytime soon because they're like, why would I sell this property that I bought for about 3% and go get another property for about 7 or 8% at this point? So we're not likely to see a whole lot of change in this low inventory anytime soon. So if you're a seller, that's still good news for you. Despite the demand being lower than what it was a couple of years ago, that was largely driven by the low interest rates, there's not a whole lot of competition, and so that's good for you. Now, as a buyer, good thing for you in this market is you can still get in there, you can find a property, then you can probably negotiate some better terms than you were able to before, and you can take your time a little bit more. The interest rates are going to be a little bit higher than what they were a couple of years ago. Those were historically low, and I think we got a little spoiled thinking that that was normal, and it certainly was not. The good thing is you can buy something, stabilize the biggest line item in your entire budget, which is going to be your housing, and prevent that from continuing to rise, because I guarantee you rents are going to continue going up. And in a time of inflation, there's no reason to think that they would not continue to go up. And also, if interest rates do come down, then you'll have the ability to go ahead and just refinance to a lower interest rate. So that's really going to be kind of my message to both buyers and sellers. If you're an investor, really the big thing is just watch your six, make sure you take advantage of the opportunities that are actually in front of you, and not just wait for the big moment to happen where you're going to suddenly jump in, because everybody's waiting for that. And, it's not likely we're going to have another 2008, 2009. It's not impossible. I'm just not seeing it in the data. We're going to see some more foreclosures coming up here in the near future. Not really to the level of what we saw back in 2008, 2009. That's more just because of the, certain programs going away that was designed to help during COVID. And those are starting to slip away. So you'll start seeing foreclosures kind of creep back up onto the market. Thank you for watching. If you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out to me on my website or my Facebook page down below. I'd be happy to chat a little bit and see how best I can help you.